When Little Wars TV issued their Quick Strike Challenge, I knew immediately I had to make a video about some forgotten American Revolutionary War history right here on Long Island. Benjamin Tallmadge's raid on the Manor St Goerge. The year is 1780. The American Revolution has been in full swing for 5 years. New York and Long Island are firmly under British occupation, and Washington and his Continentals are staying just out of reach in New Jersey. An officer of the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons and serving as Washington's spymaster, Major Benjamin Tallmadge, has a daring idea. He wants to take his men, cross the Long Island Sound, and raid supply depots and garrisons deep in British-held territory here on the island. Unsure the risk was worth it, Washington initially balked, but he eventually approved. And on the night of November 21st, 1780, Tallmadge and 80 of his men loaded into whaleboats in Black Rock, Connecticut, and crossed the Long Island Sound. They landed here, at this harbor behind me, in the modern-day town of Mount Sinai. A storm initially stopped their immediate action. After waiting almost a day, Tallmadge and his men marched nearly 20 miles south across the width of Long Island, along what is now known as the Tallmadge Trail, to here, Manor St Goerge, or as it was known at the time, Fort St George. Tallmadge's own sketch shows that the fortifications had a triangular shape, with long palisade walls enclosing the manor grounds and connecting to a square fort that overlooked Carmen's River, just over there. You can still vaguely make out the outline of it in the long grass where the cannon are. The fort covered 2 supply ships anchored in the river that night, as well as the strategically important inlet at Fire Island. During the march, Tallmadge ordered his men to unload their muskets and fix bayonets. They had the element of surprise, and they hadn't been seen during the entire sea and land crossing until they were just 50 feet shy of the fort wall. An incredible stroke of luck. A British sentry fired. The ensuing fighting was fast, lasting only 15 or 20 minutes. The British were caught off guard in the wee hours of the morning, and the conflict ended quickly. The Continentals took 1 reported casualty, captured many prisoners and supplies, and destroyed what they couldn't, burning the fort and the supply ships. On the way back to the boats, Tallmadge had his men use horses they had captured at the fort to lead a raid on the town of Coram and burn nearly 300 tons of hay the British had been stockpiling for the winter, and thus achieving Washington's primary goal for ordering the raid in the first place, before they all safely returned across the Sound. You know, I grew up not even 10 minutes from here, and this little piece of American Revolutionary history is just sitting here. You know, one of the first American soldiers ever awarded the Purple Heart, Sergeant Elijah Churchill, was on this raid, and he was awarded it in part for his actions during it. And it just remains largely overlooked, especially by the locals. These days, Benjamin Tallmadge is better known for the Culper spy ring, foiling Benedict Arnold's attempt to surrender West Point and the capture of John Andre. The Culper ring, by the way, also here on Long Island. But today we're going to recreate Tallmadge's raid on Manor St Goerge in a what-if scenario. What if British and Loyalist forces had put up a fight when Tallmadge and his men arrived? What if they knew he was coming? Was such a daring raid worth risking Washington's head of intelligence? Let's find out.
We'll be using Sharp Practice 2nd Edition as our rule set today. As such, we'll need commanders. Colonel Richard Floyd IV was a real historical figure in charge of Suffolk County Militia, though historically was not at the battle. All other British commanders are approximations, as no sources named them. And now for the Continentals. Unlike the British force, all these men are real and present at the raid. Benjamin Tallmadge, Elijah Churchill, our Purple Heart winner, Captain David Edgar, Lemuel Cook, who lived long enough to have his photograph taken. And now for the many objectives for the Continentals. There are many supplies that need to be captured or destroyed, horses that need to be captured, munitions that can be captured or destroyed, guns that can be spiked or stolen, and of course the supply ships anchored in the river. The British player has a primary deployment point in the guardhouse in the fort, and a secret hidden one in the large manor house. And here's the Americans' hidden deployment point. To start the game, the Brits start at 10 force morale and the Continentals at 9. Tallmadge runs the main force up against the stockade, while Floyd and Clark deploy from the fort. Rolling super well on his task roll, Tallmadge's force cut through the palisade fence and make it into the manor grounds. Cook and Churchill take their men on a flanking maneuver around the other side of the triangle. Sergeant Isaacs brings his light infantry out from the manor house, while Colonel Floyd maneuvers to support. In the fort, Sergeant Clark elects to stay behind and guard the gunpowder. Tallmadge wheels his men to face Isaacs and fires. Losses are had on both sides. Meanwhile, Churchill and Cook cut through the fence on the other side. Churchill moves to support Tallmadge. He fires a devastating volley into Isaacs' flank. Captain Harper finally brings the regulars out of the manor house, and Floyd tries in vain to stop Tallmadge. Isaacs decides a bayonet charge is the best way to stop Cook. While daring, the maneuver costs them, and Isaacs is forced to retreat, causing the British player to lose 2 points on the force morale table. With the regulars lagging behind, Colonel Floyd fires onto Tallmadge, with little effect. Sergeant Clark has his men take to the fort wall and fire on Captain Edgar, making a mad dash for the supply ships. Cook and Edgar volley into Floyd's flank and force him to retreat. The British player loses another 2 points. With the Loyalist militia no longer between them, Tallmadge and his men have a firefight with the British regulars. Sergeant Clark once again fires on Captain Edgar, trying to stop him from reaching the ships. Captain Harper finally manages a full volley into Tallmadge's force, causing casualties, but the turn ends before they can capitalize. Floyd and Isaacs rout off the table, losing 2 points in force morale. Sergeant Churchill orders his men to fire on the regulars to take pressure off Tallmadge, but the Redcoats return fire and knock out Churchill, losing the Continental player 2 points on force morale. However, his card is drawn almost immediately, and he pops back up ready for the fight. Cook captures the horses, losing another point for the British. Harper fires on Churchill's men, but misses every single shot. Captain Edgar made it through Sergeant Clark's men's fire and made it to the supply ship. With a lucky roll, he sets it ablaze. The British player loses another point of force morale. Captain Harper once again fires into Churchill's men, the dragoons miraculously only taking 1 point of shock. Tallmadge, however, has much better luck, firing into the regulars and killing 4. Sergeant Churchill's card is once again drawn in the nick of time. He has his men disengage from the Redcoats and decides to burn down the storehouse. This causes the British to lose their last bit of force morale, and the garrison surrenders. Captain Harper and Sergeant Clark are taken prisoner, and the supplies are captured. Floyd and Isaacs are still on the run. The horses will be used in the raid on Coram. Tallmadge and his dragoons were once again victorious. After the raids, General Washington sent Benjamin Tallmadge a letter.
I have received with much pleasure the report of your successful enterprise upon Fort St. George, and was pleased with the destruction of hay at Coram, which must be severely felt by the enemy at this time. I beg you to accept my thanks for your spirited execution of this business.
Much like historical events, Tallmadge had luck on his side today. Fantastic dice rolls and well-timed pulls from the order deck prevented the British from mounting a proper defense. While Colonel Floyd wasn't present at the real raid, he does bear some connection to the real historical events of the time. His cousin, William Floyd, was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and William's daughter, Mary, ended up marrying Benjamin Tallmadge, who went on to become a U.S. congressman.